Imagine for a second, right? You're driving and you pull over on this massive, perfectly engineered 8-lane highway.
Okay.
You step out of your car, you walk over to the shoulder, look down at the asphalt, and you just start screaming at the pavement because it hasn't, like, composed a symphony for you.
Which would be an entirely insane thing to do.
Exactly. It's a fundamental category error. I mean, you are demanding profound meaning and artistic truth from a system that was built purely for velocity.
Right. You're expecting a conduit to act as a creator. Like the asphalt doesn't care where you are going or, why your journey even matters. Its only physical objective is to literally just reduce the friction of the tires.
And that distinction, that exact disconnect, is really the beating heart of our deep dive today. So for you listening, we are unpacking an essay from April 23, 2026 by the tech theorist Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
Yeah. The piece is titled Netizen: Why Blaming X for Its Algorithm is Like Blaming NVIDIA for Not Launching ChatGPT.
It's a mouthful, but we are going to explore Bhagat's proposition that whenever we complain about, the toxicity or the bias or just the sheer noise of our social media feeds, we are effectively yelling at the asphalt.
Yeah, he basically argues that humanity has fundamentally misunderstood the actual architecture of the internet. And he maps out this massive replacement proposition he calls a civilizational knowledge layer, which is designed to entirely obsolete our current attention economy.
It's a huge, huge swing. And to set this up, the catalyst for his essay gives us, like, the perfect entry point, because Bhagat is actually responding to Robert Scoble, right?
Right, who really represents a very specific, highly influential archetype here.
Yeah.
I mean, Scoble is the ultimate power user.
Yeah.
And Scoble had just published this blistering critique of the algorithm on X, detailing how external links are just heavily penalized now, and how distribution feels completely decoupled from any actual quality.
Like, the platform completely fails to surface what is genuinely true or important,
Exactly. Scoble was basically articulating a frustration that millions of people share right now, this feeling that the machine is just fundamentally broken.
But Bhagat counters that Scoble is, he's looking at the plumbing and asking why the pipes aren't dispensing wine.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Scoble's critique assumes that X is actually supposed to be an arbiter of truth. And Bhagat uses this incredible hardware metaphor to explain the disconnect. He breaks the current tech landscape into a vertical stack.
Yeah, and he puts NVIDIA at the absolute base of that stack.
Right, because NVIDIA builds the hardware, they build the massive parallel compute engines, they provide the brute force mathematical processing power. But, I mean, nobody expects their graphics card to write an original thesis on macroeconomic policy.
No, of course not. And then sitting directly above that raw compute layer is what he calls the intelligence layer. So that is your OpenAI, your Anthropic. Right, the entity's taking that raw mathematical processing and structuring it into neural networks that can actually parse language, generate complex simulations, and reason. But Bhagat argues that X doesn't sit in that intelligence layer at all.
It doesn't.
Not even a little bit. X and platforms like it function purely as a social distribution layer.
So they sit on top of everything else as basically a mechanism to just move data packets, tweets, hot takes, videos from one node to millions of nodes in milliseconds.
Yeah.
It literally is the highway.
The highway, exactly.
And this is where the paradox of our current 2026 tech environment becomes just so glaring to me. I mean, we have OpenAI rolling out workspace agents.
Oh, yeah.
We have Anthropic's frontier AI models operating with near AGI capabilities right there in the middle layer. Yet the top layer, the actual interface where society interacts with information, is just a distribution pipe engineered for velocity and engagement.
And a distribution layer is actively hostile to depth. Like, it's just not engineered to verify philosophical truth or historical context or educational value. It's engineered purely for friction-free movement.
But wait, let me push back on Bhagat's premise here for a second, because X in 2026 is heavily utilizing advanced AI. I mean, Bhagat specifically cites Phoenix, right? X's Grok-based algorithmic engine.
It does, yeah.
So Phoenix is processing massive amounts of unstructured data to curate your feed. If the platform is relying on a sophisticated neural network to determine what I see every time I open the app, hasn't it effectively built an intelligence layer? Like, it is making active, complex decisions about reality.
It is making decisions, but the underlying mechanism there is defined entirely by its objective function.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, Phoenix is an incredibly potent intelligence, absolutely. But we have to look at what that intelligence is optimizing for. Its mandate isn't to establish objective reality. Its mandate is to predict the probability of interaction.
Oh, I see.
It's basically solving a giant mathematical equation, which combination of pixels and text will provoke a dopamine response, trigger a reply, or, initiate a share.
So it's an intelligence dedicated entirely to behavioral extraction.
Precisely.
And Fagat admits that predicting what keeps users interacting is completely divorced from predicting what keeps users informed or truthful or educated. I mean, we're relying on a massive artificial intelligence whose sole purpose is to optimize a slot machine.
A global slot machine.
Right, and then we act totally shocked when we leave the casino feeling intellectually bankrupt.
And Fagat frames this societal craving for something better in remarkably grand terms. I mean, the text actually opens with this statement: the impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago.
Which is such a wild way to open a tech essay.
It really is. But by linking a critique of a tech platform's algorithm to ancient prophecies of abundance, he's illustrating the sheer scale of the mismatch here. Like, we are standing on the precipice of an era where AI can generate infinite code, infinite text, infinite synthetic reality.
Yeah, the abundance is already here.
Right. And you cannot govern an age of limitless AI-generated abundance using a distribution layer built for, short-form behavioral triggers. A society navigating infinite reality requires an architecture that understands meaning, not just momentum.
Wow. Meaning, not just momentum. And the cost of relying on momentum over meaning becomes so obvious when we look at the 3 fatal flaws Pagat identifies in the current distribution layer.
Let's get into those.
So we touched on the first one, which is optimization for engagement. When interaction is your sole metric of success, the system naturally elevates hyperbole, outrage, and tribalism.
Simply because those are the most potent emotional levers for human beings.
Exactly. And that optimization creates a really toxic feedback loop. But the second fatal flaw kind of amplifies that loop, right? The filter bubbles and link penalties.
Oh, this is a huge one for creators.
Yeah. To maximize the behavioral extraction, the platform has to keep you inside its walled garden. And to do that, the algorithm heavily penalizes external links. So if you post a deeply researched, heavily verified external report, the system actually suppresses it to prevent you from leaving the app.
It actively buries the signal to preserve the noise.
Mm-hmm.
It literally replaces verifiable external reality with its own internal, completely opaque credibility metrics.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
But the third flaw is what truly terrifies me about this architecture, especially given where we are technologically right now. Pagat calls it temporal myopia.
Yeah, the blindness to time.
Right. The platform is structurally blind to time. Social feeds inherently prioritize the immediate now. They operate as a relentless, endless stream of the present second, which actively fragments historical context and the evolution of narratives.
And if we look at the sidebars of Bagat's blog, we actually see the context of this 2026 landscape. We're reading headlines there about autonomous AI swarms potentially hijacking democratic processes.
Right. The SpaceX and Cursor $60 billion acquisition.
Exactly. And scientists using AI for mitochondria transplants. Like, we live in a world where autonomous agents can execute complex multi-step realities in literal seconds.
And if a society's primary information infrastructure suffers from temporal myopia, right? Like, if it only remembers the outrage of the last 15 minutes, it has zero defense mechanism against a synthetic reality.
None. Consider the implications of an AI swarm introducing a highly convincing deepfake geopolitical crisis.
Oh, man.
A distribution layer that is optimizing for engagement will instantly blast that crisis to 1 billion people because panic generates clicks.
Of course it does.
And if the system has no built-in historical memory, no contextual grounding to automatically cross-reference that anomaly against an actual timeline of reality.
The synthetic crisis just becomes indistinguishable from the truth.
Exactly. The temporal myopia turns what is essentially a minor data attack into an existential societal rupture.
We lack the immune system for our own technology. I mean, it's like we're trying to use a microwave to run a Michelin star restaurant. The tool just isn't built for the job.
It's the perfect analogy. We lack the actual kitchen. We lack the higher infrastructure.
So if the distribution layer is actively harming us, how do we begin replacing it? I mean, Fagat proposes this massive startup vision called Lumina AI, which he refers to as the trillion-dollar sun.
Yeah, he's not thinking small here.
Definitely not. He doesn't suggest trying to just build a better social network. Instead, he proposes using news as a Trojan horse to establish the civilizational knowledge layer.
And the strategy begins by looking at the sheer volume of data that is already being generated out there. Fagat points out that billions of users are currently creating an infinite stream of reality.
Because everyone has a camera in their pocket.
Right. People capture video, they post ground-level observations, they document their environments constantly.
Oh.
The raw material for a perfect real-time map of global reality already exists.
The raw material is there, absolutely, but it is entirely unstructured and just drowning in noise. So Lumina's proposition is to bypass traditional centralized journalism completely and instead transform every single user into a field reporter.
But crowdsourcing reality historically leads to, like, mob consensus, not actual truth. I mean, look at Reddit sometimes.
Exactly.
So the computational elite Lumina proposes is applying an advanced AI verification engine to make that chaotic, fragmented data coherent. It takes the infinite stream of human expression and structurally converts it into a searchable, verified database of reality.
Okay, but this concept of usable truth at scale, I mean, it sounds great in a VC pitch deck, right? But the mechanics of that are incredibly daunting.
Extremely.
Because think about this for you listening. Let's say I am walking down a street in Chicago and I take a picture of a derailed train. And 10,000 other people take pictures of the exact same train.
Right.
But then another 1,000 people use generative AI to create fake images of like a massive explosion at that train. How does Lumina prevent itself from just organizing the bad information really, really efficiently?
Right. How do you stop it from just being a highly organized database of lies? Well, the safeguard lies in Fagat's total rejection of the current internet business model. To achieve this usable truth, Lumina's architecture has to be built on a zero surveillance protocol.
Zero surveillance, which goes against literally everything tech has built for 20 years.
Completely. The entire multi-trillion-dollar digital economy is predicated on behavioral tracking. They log the dwell time of your cursor to calculate your psychological vulnerabilities and then sell them to advertisers.
Because the current model relies on extracting your attention, so it fundamentally requires surveillance to manipulate your behavior.
Exactly. But Lumina's truth-first architecture abandons that mechanism entirely. And without the need to keep you hooked for ad impressions, the system can actually hand manual control of reality processing over to the user.
Which is wild.
It is. Fagat outlines 4 specific truth modes that the user can toggle between, completely changing how the engine displays the information to them.
Okay, let's run a simulation of how these modes actually function in practice. Imagine a complex, unfolding event, like a massive labor strike shutting down a major global shipping port.
Good example. So, if you select breaking mode, you receive the unfiltered real-time stream. You see the raw smartphone footage from the dock workers, the unedited press releases from the shipping companies.
So it's immediate, it's chaotic, it's largely unverified.
Right. It serves the exact same function as a current social feed, just acting as the raw sensory input of the event.
Got it. But then you can toggle into what he calls deep mode. And here, the AI shifts from just aggregation to synthesis. It pulls in logistics experts, it overlays supply chain models, and provides the analytic context.
It stops telling you what is happening on the dock and starts explaining why the labor dispute originated in the first place and how it's going to impact global shipping lanes next week.
That's incredibly useful. And from there, a user can access neutral mode, which introduces this concept of a bias-reduced framing. And I have to say, I find the concept of an AI achieving neutrality highly, highly contentious.
It's the biggest pushback to this entire model.
Because bias isn't just an algorithmic output, right? It is baked into the training data, the human labeling, the actual linguistic structures of the models themselves. Suggesting an AI can simply strip out bias feels like claiming you can unbake a cake.
It does. But the text is very careful to use the phrase bias-reduced framing rather than claiming absolute objective perfection.
Okay, so what's the distinction?
The distinction is in the optimization goal. Remember, current algorithms optimize for engagement, which actively rewards and amplifies extreme bias.
Right, rage clicks.
Exactly. Lumina's neutral mode optimizes for meaning. It actively attempts to strip away the hyperbole and the emotional loading of the raw data. Even if it's imperfect and it will be a system structurally designed to reduce inflammatory rhetoric, is fundamentally different from a system designed to weaponize it.
I see. So it is the difference between a judicial system striving for impartiality versus a judicial system where the judge is actually paid a commission based on how loudly the gallery screams.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it, yes.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And this leads us to the final setting, which is context mode. And this is the direct antidote to that temporal myopia we discussed earlier.
Right, context mode provides the historical and cross-referenced meaning. So if a politician comments on that shipping strike, the AI instantly connects that statement to decades of their previous voting records.
Oh, wow.
It pulls up historical labor disputes and maps out the evolutionary timeline of the narrative. It basically builds a massive temporal map around that one specific data point.
So the user goes from being just a passive subject manipulated by an opaque engagement algorithm to an active pilot really navigating different layers of reality. But the engineering required to achieve this verifying billions of ground-level inputs, cross-referencing history, stripping bias, translating it all globally in real time, I mean, that is way beyond the scope of a single neural network.
Oh, absolutely. A single AI model, no matter how advanced, cannot dethrone an entrenched economic paradigm. This requires a structural paradigm shift, which Bhagat calls the unified intelligence backbone.
A unified backbone.
Yeah, Lumina is not described as just an app. It is a merged ecosystem of very distinct technological primitives.
The blueprint explicitly lists 4 primitives that basically have to be fused together here: verification AI, translation engines, micropayment platforms, and blockchain identity systems.
Right.
And instead of viewing these as separate industries, Lumina envisions them as a single biological entity. It sounds like Voltron, you know? You're taking 4 separate robotic lions and combining them into a massive robot.
It is a massive central nervous system, really. And the blockchain identity system acts as the skeletal structure of that organism. It provides the rigidity and the absolute verification.
Okay, let's look at the mechanism there, because I think the general public still largely conflates blockchain with like volatile cryptocurrency trading.
Definitely.
But in this architecture, blockchain is providing cryptographic zero-knowledge proofs.
Right.
So if a user in a restricted conflict zone posts a video, the system needs to verify that they are a unique living human being located at those specific GPS coordinates. But it has to do that without requiring them to upload, say, a driver's license that could literally get them killed.
Exactly. And the blockchain allows the system to verify the authenticity of the node without violating the zero surveillance ethos.
That's fascinating.
It is, because without that skeletal verification, the AI's analysis is completely useless. It would just be synthesizing bot-generated hallucinations all day.
Right.
But remember, Lumina is a planetary interface. So if a farmer in Nepal and Bhagat's broader writings frequently focus on economic uprisings in the subcontinent, by the way, but if that farmer posts critical, verified truth about a failing crop yield, that information is only valuable if it can be understood globally.
And that is where the real-time translation engine functions as basically the neural synapses. It instantly converts that verified reality from Nepali into English for, say, an agricultural commodities trader sitting in Chicago.
The data just fires across the network without any linguistic friction at all.
But the most vital component, the element that actually sustains the organism, is that micropayment platform. Because how do you incentivize the farmer in Nepal to provide verified truth instead of just posting like a sensationalized deepfake image of a monster in the fields to get views?
Right, you have to fundamentally rewire behavioral economics.
Yeah.
In this ecosystem, the micropayment platform acts as the bloodstream. When the trader in Chicago accesses that verified insight, a fraction of a cent flows instantly without massive cross-border banking fees or gas costs directly to the farmer.
But isn't there a massive risk here? I mean, going back to the Voltron analogy, the fragility of merged systems is a huge engineering hurdle. If the micropayment layer suffers latency or the zero-knowledge proofs are somehow compromised, doesn't the entire unified backbone just snap?
The fragility is definitely a risk. But Bhagat's thesis insists that this integration is completely non-negotiable.
Why?
Because if you only have micropayments, you're just a fintech app.
Right.
If you only have identity, you're just a digital passport.
Yeah.
Only the complete fusion of these primitives allows humanity to actually escape the distribution layer.
Okay, but this complete fusion requires a radical shift in how value is generated. We have to discuss the transition from the attention economy to what Bhagat calls the narrative economy.
This is where the whole thing actually becomes sustainable.
Because if Lumina refuses to track user behavior to sell surveillance ads, how does a trillion-dollar sun sustain itself economically?
The economic incentive structure just has to be totally inverted. In the narrative economy, growth is decoupled from screen time.
Decoupled entirely.
Entirely. Value is generated based on how accurately users actually understand reality.
The blueprint introduces this concept of Lumina cred. Citizens earn this cred for verified contributions. So let's bring Robert Scoble back into the equation here. In our current attention economy, creators like Scoble are paid in the currency of reach. They are rewarded with algorithmic amplification for generating the highest volume of immediate reaction.
They are heavily incentivized to provide a sugar rush.
Exactly, the sugar rush.
Hmm?
But in the narrative economy, creators and everyday citizens earn royalties and Lumina cred tied strictly to the accuracy, context, and longevity of their input.
So instead of a fire hose of fast, fleeting posts, news becomes this collaborative, multi-layered narrative where contributors are financially rewarded for providing the nutrients, right?
Right.
Providing that deep mode analysis and context mode historical mapping.
But here's the inevitable pushback to this. What if human psychology fundamentally just prefers the sugar?
Well, decades of behavioral science would agree with you.
Right. I mean, we are naturally drawn to the easy outrage, the tribal validation, way more than the nuanced, complex truth. Forcing a narrative economy onto a population totally addicted to the attention economy seems like, I don't know, trying to sell broccoli at a cotton candy convention.
It's a fair point. The counter-argument to that cynicism, though, lies in the specific macroeconomic conditions of this 2026 age of abundance.
How so?
Well, in an era where generative AI models can instantly create infinite, highly customized, perfectly targeted entertainment and synthetic outrage, the sheer volume of that sugar drives its market value to zero.
Because when synthetic reality is infinite, it becomes worthless.
Precisely. The only scarce, highly valuable commodity left in a profoundly AI-saturated world is human-grounded, verified, contextualized reality.
So the nutrients become the only premium asset?
Exactly. Lumina's economic model assumes that businesses, algorithmic trading firms, logistics companies, and eventually the general public will happily pay for the only data stream that isn't a synthetic hallucination.
Truth becomes the ultimate luxury good, and therefore the ultimate economic driver.
Yes. And once that economic driver is established, the scale of Bhagat's vision truly expands. I mean, the outline reveals that verifying news is simply the beachhead here.
Right. Lumina is designed to be a planetary interface. Once you possess a unified backbone that's capable of verifying truth, translating languages, and processing microtransactions globally, it naturally begins consuming other societal
It
functions.
expands rapidly. The text details expansions into AI video editing to democratize production, and then transitioning into a short-form network that's actually engineered as non-manipulative entertainment,
And then it shifts into adaptive AI tutoring for personalized learning.
which has staggering educational implications. An adaptive AI tutor powered by a truth-first architecture, totally devoid of surveillance incentives, means every human being has access to a hyper-knowledgeable, perfectly patient mentor.
Grounded in verified reality rather than engagement-driven bias.
Ugh.
But Pagat takes this astonishing physical jump here, too, because the blueprint outlines Accelerator City, actual physical infrastructure designed to rapidly build startups alongside a marketplace of experiences and intelligence products.
Yeah, that's where he really pushes the boundary.
Right. I mean, we began this discussion by analyzing a frustrated tech blogger complaining about a Twitter feed, and suddenly we are discussing the construction of physical municipalities and planetary intelligence networks.
The leap from digital architecture to urban planning definitely feels audacious, perhaps even bordering on megalomania to a skeptic.
That's what I was thinking. Is it just mission creep on a civilizational scale? Does a founder setting out to fix the news inevitably just succumb to the temptation of trying to redesign the entire human experience?
Based on the structural logic of the text, Pagat would argue that it is actually a systemic necessity. And this is the rationale behind that specific metaphor of the trillion-dollar sun.
Because a sun represents a massive gravitational center.
Exactly. Everything is forced into its orbit. If humanity successfully establishes a functional truth layer and infrastructure providing verified contextual reality at scale, then education, commerce, media, and even physical city building naturally orient themselves around that gravitational pull.
You cannot construct a sustainable, advanced physical metropolis if the citizens and markets are operating on fractured, hallucinated data.
Right. The civilizational knowledge layer is the required bedrock for the next phase of human organization.
To comprehend a blueprint of this magnitude, though, we really have to examine the mind of the architect in the broader context of this 2026 environment.
We do.
Because the source material provides a look at Pagat's bibliography and the tags populating his blog, and the sheer intellectual surface area is wild.
It represents a really fascinating collision of hyper-technical foresight and profound spiritual ambition.
Yeah, we see titles that sound like standard elite Silicon Valley pitch decks, right? Like marketing escape velocity, the technologies behind agentic AI, and unicorn to Solara with purpose.
Pretty standard tech discourse.
But those sit directly next to titles like Caltheism, the economic and spiritual blueprint for an age of abundance, Prophecies are proof of God, and Precigenetics, the technology that lets us watch life think. How photons, cells, and AI may help us cure cancer.
Right, the integration of spiritual frameworks like Caltheism with treatises on autonomous AI agents and quantum computing suggests a thinker who completely refuses to compartmentalize reality.
It reads like Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks aggressively merged with a venture capital manifesto.
It really does.
He is analyzing global trade wars, proposing a reorganized United Nations, forecasting the physics of photon-based genetics, and writing novels about economic uprisings. The critical question here is whether this immense breadth lends the Lumina AI vision credibility, demonstrating a mind capable of seeing the entire planetary board, or whether it undermines the project by revealing an ambition trying to literally boil the ocean.
From an architectural standpoint, the vision actually demands that level of synthesis. If the goal is to build a planetary interface that supplants the global attention economy, a narrow specialist is fundamentally unequipped for the task.
I see.
A software engineer who is just hyper-focused on optimizing a recommendation algorithm cannot build a civilizational layer.
Because building the nervous system of the planet requires a mind actively calculating how, say, cryptographic zero-knowledge proofs impact the geopolitical safety of a dissident in a restricted state.
Exactly. And how real-time translation affects macroeconomic supply chains, and how the philosophical definition of truth aligns with ancient paradigms of abundance.
So the sheer breadth of the author's work serves as proof of concept that the Sun model is the deliberate culmination of a holistic, interconnected worldview.
Right. He is attempting to design the operating system for a deeply entangled, rapidly accelerating future where technology, economics, and human spirituality are no longer separable domains.
Stepping back to view the entire journey we have taken today, the evolution of the problem is just striking. We began with the mundane, everyday irritation of scrolling through a toxic social media feed, realizing that platforms like X are merely the asphalt.
The distribution layer, optimizing strictly for engagement, inflicting that temporal myopia on society.
Right. And then we mapped the radical alternative Lumina AI, a truth-first architecture requiring the complex fusion of blockchain identity, real-time translation, and zero-friction micropayments.
We saw how that unified intelligence backbone powers a narrative economy, using Lumina Cred to actively incentivize the curation of context and meaning over the production of viral sugar.
And this entire mechanism scales upward, culminating in a planetary interface, the trillion-dollar sun whose gravitational pull reorganizes education, commerce, and physical infrastructure around verifiable reality.
We've basically transitioned from critiquing the faulty plumbing of the internet to examining a foundational blueprint for human civilization in the age of AI.
So for you listening, the next time you open an app and you feel your stress spike at the manufactured outrage, or you just feel totally unmoored by the infinite stream of reality crashing over you without any context or memory, recall the stack metaphor.
Ask yourself if you're yelling at the asphalt.
Exactly. Are you demanding an encyclopedia from a machine precision engineered to serve you fast food? Are you expecting the asphalt to give your journey meaning?
It is a totally necessary shift in perspective.
Right.
But there is a final, highly complex variable embedded in this blueprint that requires deep consideration.
What's that?
Well, the Lumina vision relies entirely on human citizens earning cred by capturing and verifying reality. The system's lifeblood is the human field reporter observing the physical world.
The entire narrative economy rests on human observation.
Yet we are simultaneously tracking the exponential intelligence explosion in this 2026 landscape. The autonomous workspace agents, the near AGI frontier models. So the lingering question is this: in 5 or 10 years, as these synthetic intelligences become infinitely faster and more capable of parsing global data than any human collective ever could, who will actually verify the truth?
Oh.
Will the field reporters of tomorrow still be humans earning cred to sustain the narrative economy? Or will the AI systems become so flawlessly integrated and omniscient that human observation will no longer be considered the ground truth?
And instead, it'll just be viewed as a biological bias that the system must actively filter out to achieve perfect objective reality.
Exactly.